So today's January 13th, 2023. My name is Kevin. I'll be talking today with Steph White. He's a vocalist for Houston-based post-hardcore band War Within Dreams. So thanks so much for taking the time out of your day today.
Welcome. I'm happy to be here.
So before we get into like the real meat of the interview, I just like to ask a few questions about your early musical experiences. So growing up, did you grow up in like a musical family? Like, what's your musical background?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah, my family super big on music. I mean, I grew up listening to a lot of records and stuff. My uncle is actually a drummer, and my pops used to play like trumpet and stuff. So I was, around instruments and music most of my life. Um, to like get into it. I just, I know that growing up, like, music through a lot of stuff, so I, I turned like 14 years old and I was listening to a record. And I just remember one day I was like watching, it's like MTV like pop-up video, or I don't know, something like way back 20 years. This was 20 years ago, okay? And I saw like Stevie Ray Vaughan playing the guitar, and then like the Ramones and like the Sex Pistols, and like just I got super into like old school punk. And then I was like, you know what? I want to pick up the guitar. So I picked up the guitar at 14 and started playing at 14. Sorry, I'm going off of the question you asked, but yeah, yeah, like I would say that I came from a pretty musically backgrounded family. Everybody's super appreciative of music and especially dancing. Let me tell you, my parents love to dance. Wow.
So you mentioned, bands like the Sex Pistols, Ramones.
Yeah. So yeah, like yeah, the old school punk bands that I like grew up listening to,
Mhm,
those including like the Unseen, Global Threat, the Distillers was a big thing for me, and Rancid was a big thing for
mhm,
me. All those bands really inspired me to like pick up the guitar and just express myself in a way that I couldn't when I was
mhm.
just talking,
Yeah.
or like, I just felt like, you know, growing up, like I grew up in A-Leaf, and sometimes it got a little rough out there, but I feel like, my best years were those years, considering, that music really got me through all that. And
Mhm,
especially punk music, like just I was super into the heavy punk stuff, and played a lot of Battle of the Bands and stuff. I started my first punk band when I was 14 actually.
mhm,
And I did that for a few years. You know as we grow up and stuff like that too, like our musical tastes like change, and like they develop. And like back then, like things were, like we had metal, and then there was like post-hardcore started to be a thing, and like, hardcore, and like just all these other genres started popping up that I had no idea existed. And like, so I just started like learning about all these other genres, and I got super into, I was like, I really love the, yelling and punk stuff. And I was like, but I also really like the heavy screaming stuff. But then I'll have days where I'm listening to Dave Matthews Band and like, just, I jump from, I'd like to say I have a very eclectic taste in music. Um, so that helps, like just being more open to like hearing and different styles and stuff like that. And by the time I turned 15, I joined a new band called Since the Ashes, and man, they were like eclectic new metal. I can't even really tell you. They had like breakdowns, and then there was parts where I was singing, and then there was like parts that were very like Mexican influenced, like doom da doom da da doom da doom, like that kind of stuff, And I recorded my first LP with that band at 16. That was a 10-song LP. We got pretty pretty far with that, and played a lot of like sold out shows at like Fitzgerald's. I don't know if you remember Fitzgerald's. That used to be a pretty big venue here in Houston, over in the Studemont area, like Studewood and White Oak. And that's actually the venue where I saw like all my favorite punk bands when I was like younger. So like to go back there, and like play the same big stage upstairs and like sell out the same venue, like it was just like, yo, like, okay, cool, that's like, that was a goal, right? By the time I turned, I was with that band for a few years. We were together for a while, played a lot of out of town shows, did a little tours here and there. Unfortunately, things happen. We went our separate ways. I took that opportunity upon myself to join a heavier band. I was like 19 or something at this time, and it was called The Fight Scene. And that band was just straight hardcore, like all screaming. Like if I sang, it was probably for like 5 seconds, and then everything else was just hella breakdowns. I did a record with them. I did an EP with them. Also, things happen, right? So with that band was actually really cool. We had the opportunity to we won this contest called the Rockstar Energy like tour or something like that. This is whenever they were doing little tours around the US, and they were bringing huge bands like Atreyu. So we won the contest, and got to play at the San Antonio Freeman Coliseum in front of thousands of kids, and we got to share the stage with Atreyu, Avenged Sevenfold, Duran Gray, Bless the Fall, all great bands, super cool people. That was my first Coliseum show at like 19, and that to this day probably like my biggest one yet right now. But that was one hell of an experience, and super great people. That was just another journey, another stepping stone in my life with music. And so after that, like I was still into the heavy, but now I'm getting to this point, right, where I'm like, okay, but I kind of like the more chill stuff too. Like I like the singing, I really do like the singing, and I feel like my singing had a lot of potential then, but I kind of underestimated it. And we were all so fixated on the fact that I was just have this crazy cat scream. People like to call it a cat scream, no? And I'm just like, oh man, how am I going to stray away from this? It's just going to be one crazy transition because I'm so well known from screaming and like punk and metal and stuff. So how am I going to make this transition, right? So I had taken a little break from the singing, and I was like, from the screaming, and I did some guitar, in a band called Flawlessly Inadequate. It was an all-female band. It was me, it was, well, mostly female, so it was me, one guy, me, and another guy, Juan. The other three girls were all females. And that was like an electronic, like a industrial, like if I want to say if like Korn and the Beat Birthday Massacre had a baby or something like that. It was something like that, right? Did that for a little while with those chicks. At the same time, that's when I got super heavy into singer-songwriter stuff. So I picked up an acoustic guitar, and I just started busting out acoustic songs. I would just sit in like wherever I could find quiet. At the time I was living with my pops, so the only place that was quiet, because we lived in this little duplex in the Heights, and the only place that was quiet was our laundry room in the backyard. So I would just go downstairs and like lock myself in the laundry room for like 2 hours at like 1 a.m. like, and just go ham and start writing stuff. So I do have a SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Steph White. And I do have all my like acoustic stuff on there. It's very like personal stuff. It's all self-recorded in my bedroom, or something like that. And just it was another way for me to express myself, singing instead of screaming. And whenever I started doing that, I did a bunch of open mic nights. I made that a whole thing for like a couple years. Then one day I was like, like I want to be in another band. Joined a band called Mercy. that was like post-hardcore. It was two vocalists. It was me, I was doing all the screaming, and then my buddy Ashley, we call her Thrashley, she was doing the singing. And that was a very like We Came as Romans meets Paramore type style, like super groovy, you know, great guys. All the people I've always, or all the people I've been in bands with over the years, have all been super great people, super talented. I'm still cool with a lot of them still. And, you know, we never, you know, I've never left any band on like bad terms. Like, you know, it's like a family, you know, like you're in your band and like you're like brothers and sisters and stuff. Like you're gonna have your days where you're gonna butt heads and things like this. But at the end of the day, you know, if we're all on the same page, it's all good, you know. And I feel like you know, as you're growing up, you know, everybody's trying to figure out what they want, you know, and what they want to do and who they want to do it with, because this is like something that like, you know, you're putting a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of love and sweat and tears. Like you're really going in and putting this project together. And so did that for a little while. Then I decided, like, look, see, for me, just saying it out loud, it's like, yeah, growing up, I went through this whole trial and error of like, okay, where is my sound? Like, what do I want to do? And how do I want to grow from said sound and stay there, not become stagnant and then fall off and try to do something else, but stay in one place and try to build off it. But I need to be where I need to be, right? So left that band. um and then I have these buddies, Albert and Paul, who I'm in the band with now. And I met them around this time, and super cool guys. Like we had started a project back in the day together, recorded an EP in a U-Haul rental garage. Yeah, the guy that we were working with, he was recording out of a U-Haul rental garage. And you know, a little sketch, but
How did
hey,
that work? Like
yeah, so
you
like
had everything in.
he had everything in this rental garage. Like he just rented a U-Haul space, and then he had his whole studio set up, like busted in a corner. And then he had another section of it where like his band used to come and jam and stuff. And like yeah, this dude, he's a very creative guy. I don't even think he records anymore, but when he was like, and maybe that's why it was in a U-Haul, you know, because it was temporary, you know. But also cool dude. He helped us record our heavy first. Our first EP is our heaviest. That's available on Apple Music, Spotify, all that. But yeah, that early EP was mostly screaming. Let me tell you, that was when we were like in our heavy prime. And then we had taken another turn, and like right before, well, sorry, let me go back. So this was like still when I was like, you know, my early 20s, right? And then so fast forward, early 30s, in between that time, you know, same thing. We kind of, you know, took a little break from each other, still hung out, still talked, still jammed, but it wasn't like anything serious. Like we were still trying to figure it out, right? Still trying to write, see what we could do. There was a lot of lineup changes. We went through a few different members. So, you know, that's always a trial and error thing. And then, you know, over time, within that time, I went back to doing the singer-songwriter stuff, right? So I'm like, I'm going to incorporate singing one way or another. I just need to find that perfect balance, because for me, I feel like I don't want to say, I don't know if bored is the right word, but I just, I lose feeling in certain, when I'm doing certain sounds, because for me, the music is not just about how it sounds. It's really about how I'm feeling, and how the song is making me feel. Regardless if I'm writing it, recording it in that moment, I need to be able to listen to it 3 months later and still have that feeling. You know, like, ooh, you know, like, okay, man, that's a banger. You know, but so fast forward to now. You know, I'm with my guys, Albert and Paul. And then we decided, you know what, like, you know, we had a meeting. We were like, you know what, like, this is what does everybody want to do? Like, is this something that, you know, like, is this something we really want to push? Like, is this something, you know, we really want to, you know, give to the world? Like, do we want to share this with the world? Yeah, everybody's like, yeah, we're down. We want to do this. And then I expressed myself. I'm like, okay, well, for me, I was like, the newer stuff, I was like, I want to take it in a new direction. I want to go from this super heavy sound to a more melodic sound. Like, I still want to keep some heavy in there. I don't want to completely take it away, but I want to add some melodic ambient sounds, right? I'm a huge Deftones fan. So when it comes to like Deftones and like Circa Survive and like these kind of bands, I really was trying to think like, okay, there's got to be a way to fuse how I'm feeling and thinking into music, right? So the boys, they play 8-string guitars. So already it's gonna be heavy. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be heavy already. So but we had recently got a new guitarist. His name's Robert Martinez, and super cool dude. Super thankful to have him a part of the family as well. I feel like he was like the missing piece almost, you know. Everybody's got very eclectic musical backgrounds, and we found our drummer Carlos right before COVID. And this is when we recorded Sway, which is our um newer song out of all of them, and is also kind of pointing everybody in the direction of where we're trying to go. So that song out of all of our songs has the most singing in it, and less screaming, and it's just getting more developed as we're writing, as we're progressing. You know, we dropped Sway, and you know, and then COVID happened, so like it was super unfortunate that we had you know, had this lineup and, you know, recorded the song, did a bunch of promos, like was ready to start just pushing, right? Boom, the world shuts down. So when that happened, you know, that was this huge setback. You know, and that's out of our control, right? So but that was just a super bummer. But I feel like during that time, I feel like the band kind of needed that break, maybe without saying we needed that break, because we all really came back with a completely different mindset, and just so inspired. Like, I've just been like, you know, and we were all going through our own personal stuff, you know, and getting through some hard times, you know, but man, we somehow the universe just brought us back together and was like, y'all need to figure something out, y'all need to be together, right? And so we, you know, we're listening to Sway, you know, we're like, man, we didn't get to push the song very what much, you know. So what can we do? What can we do to like get the hype going again while we write these new songs and all that, right? So 94.5 did the contest in November called Hometown for the Holidays. And over hundreds and hundreds of bands submitted to this contest. And the winner was going to get it was going to be 10, the top 10 bands were going to get radio play for the entire month of December, right? So we submitted Sway to this contest, and like I said, over hundreds of bands submitted. We made top 40 in the contest, and then we landed a online Instagram live interview with Alberta from 94.5 The Buzz. So that was cool, you know, some good opportunities there. Unfortunately, we didn't make top 10 this year, but that's okay. That just means we're gonna have to do it next year, you know. And next year maybe the song will be even more radio friendly, you know. But well, and our following will be up. So that's really the focus right now. We're right now, we're in pre-production, so we're writing. We've got 3 songs that are ready, and we're going to be going back into the studio in February. So there's going to be lots of new music coming, the music videos. Like we're really busy right now, so we're really just trying to uh get some things going so we can start, touring and doing all that. But the biggest focus right now is just getting that new music out there, sharing it with the world, and get trying to get a bigger following, like networking, making new friends, like, doing this right here, meeting Kevin, but I feel like I mean, it's a lot of work, and another thing too, coming back from COVID and being a part of this family, it's a family really. It just makes me realize, like, regardless of like how tough life can be, and like the things that we go through and the trials we go through on a daily basis, and just having to deal with different emotions that come and go, and thoughts that come and go, and how to really reflect that onto something positive, and this past year I've learned a lot about patience, and just being more understanding, and I probably get that from my Filipino mama, okay? But yeah, so just being back with the family and stuff like that has been really great. And like I said, I feel like everybody came back with a fresh mindset. Everybody's got the same goals. And like I said again, we had got a new member, Robert, and he's really been like adding to the mix like hella. And just the vibe is just right. Like I've been in multiple bands and projects, obviously for most of my life, and just being in this project, I don't know, it's just something about it. Like I just know, we're gonna do something with it, something big. Whether it's touching people's hearts from across the world, or whatever the case may be, getting somebody through a breakup or whatever the case, I really have a feeling like it's gonna be a big thing. And especially because of all of the passion and love that we put into to our music, especially when it comes to like writing. Like, we'll just sit in the band rehearsal room for hours. Like we'll go through the set, and then we'll just sit there for hours and just talk about the different goals, and just like write just random things to prepare ourselves for the next thing, um joke around because we're done. But super cool guys. But yeah, we've got a lot of cool stuff in the works right now, so that's gonna be really cool. And yeah, hopefully, I'm really hoping everybody's gonna enjoy it. I mean, I know that a lot of people enjoy it. A lot of our OG fans, um, love the singing stuff. They want to hear more of the singing stuff, so that was something we really considered as well. And plus, for me too, like I was saying, I was like, I really enjoy the singing part. I love screaming too, don't get me wrong, but I think the older I get, the more I appreciate being able to sing along to a song, and truly understand what's going on in the song. I'm not saying that you can't do that with screaming and stuff, but it's an acquired taste. I feel like not everybody is into screaming and all that stuff. So I'm like, how can I still be heavy but maybe have singing, so that's where we're at right now. Let's try to keep it like heavy and ambient, but I'm gonna throw some singing over it, and but yeah, I'm really excited for you guys to hear it. Like I said, we're gonna start recording our new single in February, so hopefully like March, April is when the first song will drop. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I listened to some of your stuff. I listen to Sway. I like Sway.
Oh,
You have
nice.
really good vocals, man, I have to say.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, yeah, you have a very, very impressive background. I did not know about the whole Rockstar tour thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Rockstar Energy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know you guys like won. Like so, being that like young, like as a teen, I'm assuming, at that, oh yeah, especially because Contrayu, and anyways, like when you,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah,
yeah, that's a yeah, that's a while ago.
yeah.
So what was that like, as someone like pretty young, and you're super into that music, what was it like talking to those guys? And like, did it have some, did you learn any lessons, any
Oh
impact?
yeah, for sure, for sure. Man, it's crazy. It's kind of crazy how the story goes, right? So, so before I was in the fight scene, I was in that band Since the Ashes, right? And it was like towards the end where I was transitioning. And so these guys, the fight scene, they just ran it like we used to play shows with this band, and they just randomly called me up one day and they were like, "Hey, Steph, uh, we just won this Rockstar Energy contest, and our singer quit. So can you do you want to sing for us?" Basically. And I was just like, yeah, man, I'm a fan of your music, so yeah, I'd be down. Not thinking like Rockstar Energy, like it didn't register in my head like Rockstar Energy drink this contest. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm just thinking like, oh, it's another like show, festival thing, whatever. They were like, okay, well, it's this weekend and you have one, like basically one day to learn 6 songs. And I'm like, oh, crap. And mind you, like this is a completely different genre. You know what I mean? Like I'm going from this eclectic, like post, I don't even know, rock thing to hardcore, like metal, right? And so I mean, if you have a musical background and you can differentiate the different genres of music, you know that, these breakdowns can be very intricate in these heavier stuff, right? And like going between the highs and the lows, and like just the timing is crazy. And just me never jamming with this band before, never like I don't even know what kind of people they are when you're jamming, like I just know how they are as friends, because we were all friends. So I'm like, sure, like I'll do this, like we'll have one day to practice. The day before we have to drive out to San Antonio. I'm like, okay, cool. Still, mind you, I'm not registering that this is a rock star thing, right? And so we get there, I get to the studio space and they're like, all right, like how's the songs going? We go through the set and went fine. And then I'm like, okay, tell me more about this show, like what's going on with it? They're like, oh, well, we, entered Rockstar Energy contest to play with these said bands, and we got it. And I'm like, wait, what? Wait, you didn't hold on, we're playing at a Coliseum, bro. Like tomorrow. They're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh snap. And I'm like 18 or 17, 18 years old. Like I'm young, and like, and Atreyu was like I was just like, oh my God, like they were one of my favorite bands growing up too. And Bless the Fall too. I really liked Bless the Fall. And but just hearing about Atreyu and Avenged Sevenfold, I was already starstruck in that moment. I was like, wait, like you're mean to tell me like I just got done watching Lip Gloss and Black music video. I'm about to go play this with them. And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, all right, all right. We gotta keep it cool, gotta keep it cool. And so I learned the songs, man, and a day, like while they were driving out there, even in the van, I was just sitting there with my headphones, just going over the songs over and over and over. I'm like, I can't fuck this up. Oh, sorry. But I can't mess this up, right? And I was just like, I gotta do this. So I'm like nervous. I'm not even gonna lie. I never really got nervous. Like ever since my first show in middle school, like I just have never really gotten nervous, like before I hit the stage. I'll get a little anxiety, you know what I'm saying? But I'll just do my little ritual and like, take deep breaths and, have my room temperature water, things like this. Um, so yeah, so like we're on our way. We get there and we get to the back, where all the buses are. And at this point I didn't see anybody yet, right? So I'm just like looking at the dudes like, hey, y'all see anybody? Like, nah. And like we're trying to find the person running the thing. We find them, we check in. Then they're like, okay, so you guys have this room. And then they start basically, this room is Atreyu's, this room is Atreyu's. And we were just like, okay. Like, no big deal, bro. Like, and then yeah, but anyway, so to really answer your question, yeah, I was really nervous. I'm not even gonna lie. I was super nervous. But not only because these bands were like bands that I was like growing up listening to, and I'm actually about to share this huge ass stage with them, but more so of the fact that like I was really going into this blind because I had never played a show with this band. Or any done anything with this band really. Um so this was really like my first show with them too, and like having to learn all those songs within a day was just like, you know. So we're like walking around the back, just everybody's like staying together, right? Because everybody doesn't like know where to go or like who to talk to or what to do, right? I'm like, nah, man, like everybody break off, like go network, go like talk to somebody, go do something, right? And then so I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna go check out the stage, right? And because mind you, it's sound check, there's nobody there, it's like during the day. And so I'm walking towards the back of the stage. I go up there, I'm like looking around, and then I just hear like somebody doing vocal warm-ups, right? And I'm like, what's going on? And like I turn, and it's fucking Alex Farkatsas from Atreyu, the singer. And he's just standing on stage, backstage right, just pacing back and forth, doing his thing. And I'm like, oh man, do I want to talk to this guy? I'm not gonna talk to this guy. I'm gonna talk to this guy. Like, I'm gonna go talk to this guy. So I go up to him, I'm just like, hey Alex, I'm Steph, dude. My band's opening up for you guys tonight. I just want to say, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm very grateful to be sharing the stage with you guys. And in that moment, it was kind of like I didn't even really have to say much. I could just look at the guy, and it was like he was reading me without me having to say everything, because he just had this huge smile on his face and super sweet guys. And he was just like, well, I'm super stoked that you're here and that you're this excited, and like this is it. He was like, this is a great opportunity. And he was like, I actually heard some of y'all's music. He's like, I'm really excited about it. And I was just like, oh my god, this dude heard this music. But what he doesn't know is in that moment, I wasn't the singer on that recording that he heard. Okay, it was somebody else, and he had like quit, but even still, it went really really good. That was my, yeah, like I said, that was my first Coliseum show with them. uh well, period. Stage was huge, sound was amazing. At one point I like jumped off the stage onto this barrier, and I'm coming from, Houston, local. I'm used to, like I said, like Warehouse Live and all that stuff, Meridian, jumping off the stage, and there's nobody there to catch you, there's nobody there to look out for you, you know what I'm saying? But at this show was the first time I felt somebody's big ass hand just grab the back of my belt and hold me there while I had like 300 hands pulling at me like this. So I was my first experience with like fans really like into the music, and they have no idea who we are, or maybe they did, I don't know, because we won that contest, right? But that was just my first time really having that rock star experience, right? And like I was like, I don't ever not want to not have that again, Not even just the pulling and all that, but just the feeling in general of strangers just connecting with you because of your music, Like that's just a crazy feeling. I think that's probably, in my opinion, the best feeling for me personally. That's the best feeling. Like if I want my serotonin to just shoot up, all I got to do is record a song and play it for somebody. If they're smiling, jamming out to it, that's all I need. That's all I need. Even if it's just a little, like, you know what I mean? That's all I need. And but yeah, that show was amazing. I was nervous as hell, but it went really well. And they were all super cool people. We got to talk to Avenged Sevenfold a little bit, and a little bit of one of the members of Bless the Fall. Duran Gray, I can't remember if they're from Japan, or I know they're from either Japan or China. Sorry, don't quote me on that. I'm not sure where exactly they're from, but I do know that they were from not the US, and but they were also really cool people. I had never heard of them before, but they were amazing. And but yeah, just being that young and getting to experience that, I think to be completely honest, maybe I would have appreciated it a little more being older now, you know what I mean? I mean, I was so young, and I just feel like I was just so fixated on the fact that I was just playing with these bands that I grew up listening to, and I look back at it now, and being that young, like not really knowing which direction to go or how to present our music as like a business standpoint type deal, you know what I mean? I guess we could have like networked a little better, and stuff like that, but it was a great opportunity. I look at it now as just having that experience under my belt, and just being like just the joy that I had playing the music for the people and meeting all these people. We met hundreds of kids that day, hundreds of kids, like, and I was not expecting it to be like that. I'm thinking we're gonna open for these big bands, and then everybody's just gonna be so fixated on these big bands they're not even gonna like think about us anymore, like that type of deal, right? But as soon as we got off stage, security was like, okay, you guys have a tent set up in the hallway, on East Hallway, blah blah. And we're like, what? Like what? So they're like, yeah, your merch is set up over there. And we're like, oh, okay, okay, okay. Cause like we had a merch team. They took care of all that stuff while we were doing sound check and all that stuff. So we were just kind of like, it's like production, you know what I mean? It's like a movie production or whatever, but this is music. So it's the same thing. Like you have somebody there that's cueing you on all of the different things that you need to do. Okay, guys, you're on in 5 minutes. Okay, guys, get back here. Okay, guys, you need to do this, you need to do that. And you're just like, oh my God, you're like this young person, and you're like trying to like, I'm just here to sing. but you're like, okay, like that was my first time experiencing something like that. So I was like, okay, like, all right, let's go. What are we doing? So we get to the tent, and there was a line that wrapped around the whole, pretty like half the stadium. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, man. Somebody's making some good merch right now. And the guy that was walking us to the tent, he was like, that's y'all. And we're like, what? What? That's for y'all. What? They was like, yeah, that line, they're waiting to meet you guys and like take pictures and stuff. And I'm like, wow, I have no words. Like I was just, wow, that's awesome. Like that was crazy. So that day, so that point, that was the first time I had that experience, just getting to meet everybody who appreciated the music. You know what I mean? Like when you come to like, I mean, you can come catch me at a show in Houston, and I'll talk to you for however long you want to talk. Like I'm not that kind of person that's let me come play the show for you, and this is what I do, and then I dip. I really appreciate the people that take the time to even just listen and stream our music. I appreciate it even more for the people who take the time to come out to a show and show out at a show. Take 5 seconds to come and be like, yo, I really love your song Sway, or like whatever. Like I really appreciate this kind of stuff, and I don't take it lightly, like I really feel like the whole reason I do what I do is for you. You know what I mean? And for everybody else, and I feel like I said, if I can touch somebody in a certain way, like musically, and it helps them get through something, or happy, or whatever the case may be, I'm happy to do it. But I also want people to know that I want to hear that from you. I want you to come up to me and talk to me. I want you to come give me that big hug. I want you to come dab me, high five me, whatever you need to do. Come say what's up. Like I really appreciate stuff. I know a lot of people get intimidated because there are artists out there who are very standoffish, and or will do what they need to do and then go back to the van or like whatever. But But I will tell you, I will stand out there and I will talk to whomever, whenever. I've met some really cool people doing stuff like that, and I feel like it brings people closer to your music as well. When you do things like this, like when you network and really connect with people, I feel like, you know, they appreciate your work a little more because, you know, I know that for me, like, you know, when I had the opportunity 1 year to go to this thing called the NAMM convention in California. um the band that I was playing guitar in was sponsored by Daisy Rock Guitars. So we got to fly out to Anaheim, California. And this convention you have to be specially invited to. You can't just buy a ticket and go from the street. Like you have to be invited by a vendor or like you know, something like that, right? And so we were invited by Daisy Rock and got to experience that. And I met a lot of cool people there. Like I met DJ Cascade, you know, I met one of the dudes from Slipknot, I met all the members of Deftones except for Chino. He wasn't there. No, but and just random ass musicians that were just walking around, vibing, you know, drinking, shopping, you know, because they're presenting, you know, musical instruments and accessories and all kinds of things that are not yet released to the public. So all of these musicians and stuff have first opportunity to buy these products before they hit the market, right? So I remember when I went up to like the Deftones, for example, you know, I'm just like going up to all of them, like, hey man, like what's up? Like I know them or whatever, like we're homies. But they're all like super chill, you know, and but that was like my first, like not first interaction, because obviously with the trade and like all that stuff, but anytime I have a like an interaction with a band that I know of or like that I love or whatever, I always try to like see how they are with their people, you know what I mean? Like how they are, how they engage with their fans, you know? Cause I'm like, cause everybody's different, you know what I mean? And you know, I've had shitty experiences meeting people too. Like Job for a Cowboy. I'm sorry. Like back in the day, their music was awesome. And I'm sure they were cool people, but man, that singer was a dick, let me tell you. Sorry, pardon my French. But he was just so freaking rude. Yeah, we like I like my girlfriend at the time was like a huge fan and she really wanted to meet them, and I'm like, you know what, that's cool, like I'm down, like we'll wait in this line, right, to meet these guys. I get it. When you're done playing a show, you're hungry, you're tired, you know, you just need a second to unplug or whatever. But take that second to unplug and do what you got to do before you're about to engage with people. Because that experience was horrible. I'm sorry. But we long story short, we're in line, we meet everybody's super sweet in the van. We get to the singer and he's like balls deep in his food, not even looking at anybody that's coming to the table. And he's just grabbing the thing like this, signing it and pushing it back off like this. And like my girl at the time, she's like trying to talk to him like, hey, I'm a big fan, like this is this. He's just doesn't even make eye contact with her, just eating. He was like, you know, cool, thanks, you know, just on some BS, you know. And that really just showed me how I would never be with anybody, you know. I just feel like it, you know, and I'm sure he's not the only one, but I you know, like that's what I'm saying, you know, musicians, they're all different, and everybody, you're gonna have a different experience meeting different musicians, and there's gonna be musicians who don't even want to meet their people, which I think is crazy. And then there's musicians who really appreciate their people, you know. Um, oh, another fun show I did was uh at the time it was the Meridian, and it was the band Since the Ashes that I was with, that I did the LP. We played a show with you remember that band Kitty? It's like an
Mm,
all-girl metal band. There was a band called Kitty, and then there was a hardcore band that was a female fronted called Walls of Jericho. And then there was the other band called like Calico System. We all played a show together, and those people were super awesome too. And like they are huge. Like Kitty is huge, dude. Kitty and Walls of Jericho, they're pretty fucking big. So like even them, they were super down to earth, super cool people. Um, I feel like that's just really important in my opinion, you know. But sorry, I'm getting off topic. Yeah, I'm just gonna
No worries.
thanks for
No,
coming.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Oh, yeah, no, I was not expecting it because like Job for they make some like cool music. I was not expecting like Entombment for a Machine, I think is
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I did not expect yeah, I guess like that's a great point. Like I guess, never
Judge a
uh
book by its cover.
yeah, never judge a book by its cover and like, meeting your heroes isn't
It's not
uh
always what you think it's
yeah,
gonna be, you
yeah.
know?
That's
And like that was kind of a bummer, like I said, but I mean, who knows? I mean, like I said, I don't know what was going on with that dude. Maybe he had something
mhm,
personal
yeah.
going on or whatever. Like we never know, right? But I just feel like if that's the case, take that time, to have that release
Yeah.
or do what you got to do before you're, meeting these people who love you for what you're
Mhm,
doing,
yeah.
like, it's just kind of a slap in the face,
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like they're there for you, like
You
there's
know what I'm saying? Like that's like, yeah, like that just doesn't make any sense to me, or like yeah, like I never really understood that,
mhm,
you know?
yeah.
And like I said, I haven't experienced that often, maybe
Mhm,
a few times, but when I did, it just made me really just showed me like don't ever be like that. It
mhm,
don't matter if you're making all the money in the world, touring, have a jet plane, five mansions or whatever, never change who you are based on these factors. You know what I mean? Like
mhm,
money comes and goes, dude. Things like these come and goes. Music is forever. You know what I mean? That's gonna be there forever. Like there's songs that I listen to that were dropped in the '80s that I'll still listen to on repeat. You know what I mean? Um, and it's like I don't know. Yeah, it's crazy, right? That's what's crazy.
So got a quick question for you. So,
Yeah.
how did you first learn to, like scream or like sing and scream? Like,
Oh, that's a great
what's that
question.
whole process like, I guess?
Yeah. So, oh man, it's not a story I'm proud of, but but it is one I will share. No, growing up, I dealt with a lot of stuff at home. And like we won't get into details, but I just went through some hard times at home. And at the time, I was like super into the band Suicide Silence and Bring Me the Horizon, right? So like Mitch Lucker at the time and Oliver Sykes, they were like my heroes, right? And I was like, I want to learn how to scream like that. I'm like, how the hell do they do that? I'm like trying different things, like looking like at the time you couldn't really YouTube anything, like internet wasn't developed like that when I was that young. We had AOL and that was it, maybe MySpace, you know what I mean? But yeah, so one day, dealing with some hard stuff, and I remember I got into like this huge fight with my mom, and my mom's the Filipino one, right? And I feel like I I still haven't been to the Philippines. I plan to go there sometime this year. I have like a whole family out there I've never met in person. But like with that being said, I feel like, just the culture out there is completely different, and how everything is out there is like completely different, and like how we do things here in America is not tradition to how they do things in the Philippines, right? And so my mom and I just like kind of always like butted heads, I've always been kind of a daddy's boy. And I just remember one day like we got into this super, super huge fight. Just super huge fight. It was probably our biggest fight then, And I just got so I'm a teenager, okay? A raging teenager to say the least. I have all these emotions. And so I just remember getting so angry and I couldn't, express myself with words. Cause what am I gonna do? Like sit there and cuss my mom out? Like, nah, bro, she's gonna come with me with a chancla or something, and beat the crap out of me. Nah, I'm just kidding. I love you, mom. But I'm just saying, like, she moms know how to push your buttons, right? Your mom is always going to know how to push your button. She pushed my button, and the next thing I knew, I was screaming at the top of my lungs. Um, Not even words, just I just screamed. I was just so upset. I was so angry, and I just didn't know what else to do. So I just screamed. And in that moment, it was like one of those things where like it like happened, and then like a little more than mid scream, I was like, oh, is that how you do it? And then immediately I was like, okay, I gotta figure this out. I gotta figure this out. So in a way, thanks, mom. You kind of helped me figure that out. You know what I'm saying? If you want to take something positive out of a negative situation, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's really how I learned, to be honest. I was just really freaking emotional one day, and was like, and then I was like, oh, that sounded kind of cool. And then after that, I was like, all right, let me figure it out. Started like trying different things. Um, and then whenever like that's when I found the band Since the Ashes, actually. And like I found them on MySpace, and I was like, oh, this kind of sounds like something I would love to do. And maybe I could put my screaming to the test type deal. So these guys, super cool. Yo, come to a practice, like learn this song, come to a practice, let's hear you. And this is this. I'm like, all right, cool, sounds good. I go to a practice, and they're like, oh, we don't have a PA system right now. It's busted or whatever. I'm like, boy, I don't need a microphone. I'm like, watch me though. And they're like, all right, cool. So they play it for a song. I'm screaming, right? In this practice room with two guitar players, a bassist, and a drummer. And we're in this little tiny ass practice room in this house in A-Leaf. And I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. And boy, let me tell you, you could hear everything I was screaming over all of that without a microphone. Okay. These guys stop, and they're like, where the hell did that come from? Type deal. That's when I figured out like how to do my highs, like my super high cat scream. Then that's when I was like figuring out how to do the lows. Don't get me wrong, this is years and years of practice. Okay. Like when I haven't always been where I'm at right now, especially singing wise too. Like this all has been developed over the years. But yeah, when I first started streaming, like trying to figure that out was gnarly. That was yeah, that was just like kind of trial and error, all over the place. Like there were times where we would play like 4 shows back to back, and like I would lose my voice from screaming so much. So it was like trying to figure out like how can I do this? How can I control this without losing my voice and still be able to do a singing part or like whatever. So that was years of training my throat, and not cheating, not using throat coat and doing all that stuff that people do. I did it the healthy way. So like if I would play a show, before the show, my routine would be to like gargle warm salt water, and warm, not hot. Warm salt water, and then have my room temperature water with me when I'm playing. I don't drink any cold beers or anything like that before a show. You will never catch me drinking anything or doing anything before a show. If you want to come bring me a beer during the set or after the set, that's cool too. But right before the show, you won't catch me doing that. Cold water tends to like mess up your vocal cords, makes you crack and stuff when you sing. So what I like to do is I'll do the, gargle salt water thing. I'll have my water, play the show, and then afterwards I'll have my beer or whatever. And I usually like to end the night with like some hot green tea, to break down the vocal cords, because people don't really realize, like, screaming and doing all this stuff, it can be straining, too. And you just have to make sure you're not only doing it correctly, but you're taking care of your voice after the fact, and you're doing what you need to do to make sure you're good to go for the next day, or the next afternoon, or whatever the case may be. So, but yeah, man, it was lots of trial and error. And it was a lot of losing my voice before I figured out how to keep it entirely. But once I figured that out, I mean, I'm at a place now these days. I mean, I'm 34 now, and I feel like I've got enough years and experience of training and taking care of my voice that like now it just doesn't even phase me. Like I can literally, without any emotion, high scream, low screams, you name it, just it's just another way of talking for me at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's like 12:08. I said like 12
Oh
times.
no, you're good, man. I'm
You
chilling.
have, okay, you have a few more
No,
few more
I'm
minutes
good.
for a few more questions. Is that all?
I got you, Kevin. I have no plans until 2, so we're good.
Okay, great. Okay, sounds good. So I
Sorry,
just
I keep dragging on and
no, no, this is no, like I think you have some like very, very cool, unique, awesome experiences, and like it's honestly really cool to hear all the stories you have. I want to learn more.
awesome.
So I guess my next question is like you know, when you're songwriting or singing, or you're writing music, playing in a band, what would you say is the biggest challenge for you, I guess? After all these years, what would you say is the one thing that keeps kind of um coming back to you, or like, oh, I need to work on this, or if there is anything.
No, for sure, always. I feel like it was at one point. It's gotten a lot better now. I feel like it was at one point where you know stagnancy. You know what I mean? Like I feel like how I was telling you, like I'm very like about the feeling of the song and like the emotion that comes with it and how it makes you
Mhm.
feel and all that stuff when you're hearing it and stuff.
Yeah.
Same, it's the same when I'm writing it. It's the same. Like no lie, I probably write the best when I am absolutely destroyed. Like I'm not even gonna lie. Like if take my heart out, stomp on it, dance around it, I will write you a golden record, okay? No, it's crazy. I feel like something that keeps kind of pulling me back sometimes is really that. I feel like like I'm not saying that I can't write when I'm happy or like when I'm just chilling. I can. Is it gonna be my best work? Maybe. But like there are days where you're just kind of like like I'll have my days where I'm like I'll like write something like super badass and I'm like, man, I'm really feeling this, like this is cool. And then maybe like another day I'm like feeling a certain type of way or whatever. And I'm like, nah, this is shit, like, I don't like this anymore. But then I'll listen to another day. I'm like, okay, it's like a back and forth thing, right? So I really feel like it's based on like how I'm feeling, really, to be honest. Um, but that's something that, like I was saying, I've worked on, especially after coming back from COVID and stuff with these guys, just not allowing my emotions to control what I'm doing. um I've been practicing more like emotional intelligence too, like things that come into your mind, they're not permanent, they're just there to pass, right? So we just got to accept that it's happening, let it flow, take what it comes with, and let it pass, right? And that's something that I've been trying to do when it comes to like my writing the music too, like because like I said, sometimes I'll be writing in a certain mood or whatever, a banger, and then like I'll be like going through something or whatever, and then all of a sudden I'm like allowing that to not like get in the well, kind of get in the way, like kind of like makes me like pause, and then like I kind of put that on a shelf. And then here's another day and I wrote something completely different. Now I'm putting that on a shelf. And now I have this whole bookshelf of all these different, songs and ideas and expressions. And so now I'm at the point in my life where I'm standing in front of this bookshelf and I'm just slowly taking these things down and I'm working with it as they go, as it comes. And I'm no longer allowing whatever it is going on in the world personally or whatever affect my flow of what I need to do to make this music happen for these people, you know, and for myself, because I look at music also as like a meditation, really, like a very therapeutic thing for me. Like this is how I express myself, um emotionally, mentally, physically, you know. When I'm on stage, I don't even know where I am, to be honest. I It's kind of like I said, like a meditation. I'll like And I was talking to my drummer about this the other day. Actually, we were talking about this. We were like shooting the shit, and I was like, man, is it just me, or like when you're on stage, do you ever feel like you're just like not there, but you're there, but like you're on autopilot or something? And he's like, yeah, it's kind of like you're like floating above yourself. I'm like, right. And you're like watching yourself perform. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, so I'm not the only one that feels like that. He's like, no, I do the same. I do the same thing. I'm like, are we like in a trance when we're performing? You know, I've always tried, like, it's like if you're not a musician and you don't perform and you don't you know, play shows and do stuff like that, it's kind of hard to like explain, you know what I mean? But it's like, but not because, you know, one thing I get a lot too is like, yo, Steph, like, man, bro, when you're on stage, you're like a completely different person. And like, then I'm like, how though? Like, I don't see it. And then I'll look at videos and stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, I see. Oh yeah, yeah. But I tell them, I'm like, but it's a vibe. You know what I mean? Like you just become. It's like, you know, when a ballet dancer is dancing, or you know, or if, you know, somebody's playing basketball, you know, or like skateboarding. You're like in the zone and you're doing something that makes you so happy, and you're just not fixated on anything else but that moment, you know. And I feel like now, like, yeah, like with the whole writing and stuff now, it's become a lot more fluent, you know. I feel like I'm at the place now where I am embracing everything that I'm feeling. I'm embracing it and allowing myself to express it through my music rather than letting it define me or put me in a stagnant place, or you know, stuff like that. So and don't get me wrong, it helps. It really helps having a band family um to help get you through those things, you know what I mean? And help you get out of those stagnancies, because you know, like, you know, I'd be lying to you if I told you like, oh yeah, I write every day and I do this every day. Like, no, I sing every day. For sure. I sing every day. Whether it's my own stuff, or just singing to the radio, you know. But I think that, you know, it's just given all of everything that comes with writing music, and just and having the patience to, and if you're working with, you know, four other dudes, you know, it's like everybody has an opinion, everybody has their own view on something. um but the way we write is actually really cool, and I've learned is very beneficial for us as well. I travel a lot for my full-time job, so you know, it's hard to get together, you know, all the time. So when I am in town, we try to get together like 2 times a week, and then in between we'll just send each other ideas and stuff, right? And usually Albert, and Paul, and now Robert, will come up with little riffs or like ideas. They'll do a pre-production of it, send it my way, and then I'll kind of jam it out. And I'm like, all right, it's all about feeling for me. If I'm not feeling it, I'm probably not gonna write to it. I'm not gonna. And I'm like super honest with the dudes too. Like I'm a brutally honest, very straightforward person. You know what I mean? Like I'm very blunt too. I don't beat around the bush. So if I don't like it, I'm straight up. I'm just like, I don't like this. You know? And they're like, oh, Steph don't like it. We gotta do, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, like straight up. Like they're really good about that stuff. And it's not like, and I'm not like a dick or anything. Like I'm not like, oh, this is trash, you know, but like I'm very honest, and I'm like, you know, I really like what you did here. but I don't like how it, for example, I don't like how it transitions to this, or I don't like how you brought this back and it strays out like this long. Because I try to also put myself in the position of like, if I'm the outsider listening to the song, like, am I gonna lose interest on this part? Am I gonna, is this dragged on to that? Now this part is overkill. You know what I mean? So the guys are really good at trying piecing like the musical stuff together for me. I'll kind of explain to them what I'm hearing or like an idea. They'll show me a riff and I'm like, okay, I really like that. Like I can run with this. I like that. And then like they'll show me another and we kind of just piece together, right? Until we all are in agreement with length and like all that stuff. When it comes to like lyrics and melodies and harmonies, that's all me. I do all that. Without them. Like I said, they'll do like the pre-production for the music. I'll usually take it home. Like I got my own little setup here and I'll do my own vocals and stuff here at home. That way I can in peace in my own area, in my own space, really figure out like how I want to sing said part or how I want to transition, if I'm going to overlay harmonies, how am I going to, is this chorus punchy enough, like am I feeling it when I'm singing it here, and then I'll like and for me this is so horrible. I'm ranting, but but this is so horrible. I have like OCD to an extent, right? Like I'm very like I don't whenever I'm doing pre-pro, I don't go back and like pitch correct my vocals and like edit my vocals and stuff. I do everything raw. Everything's raw and everything's live. So I'll just play the song, hit record, and then whatever comes out, that comes out. And then I'll do that multiple times. So I'll have the same track saved like 15 times with like 15 different ways that I've done the singing until I go back and I listen to it and I'm like, ooh, yeah, that hits. You know what I mean? Like, ooh, or sometimes a certain part will hit on this track that I did and it won't hit on the other track. So I'll just like, okay, I have to do it like this here. It's like a puzzle piece, it's like you're putting something together. So it's a lot of trial and error. But man, let me tell you, if I didn't go through the hardships I went through this past year, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at right now. No, but yo, but man, if anybody out there wants to know what the secret formula to writing a banger song, it is heartbreak, let me tell you. You know what I'm saying? I think any musician will say that. Any musician, if you want a banger, get your heart broken. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna come up with a banger. I'm good now, guys. I'm good now. I'm just saying. Like I'm literally right now as we're writing like this new record, like I feel like just so like excited. Like I'm super stoked. Just even thinking about it right now, I can feel myself smiling. I'm just really happy to be with these guys and have this opportunity with them, and that everybody's on the same page and everybody's like just as stoked as me and we all have the same goals. This new music is awesome. I really feel like we finally found our sound as a whole with our differences, if that makes sense. Like out of all the years I've been playing with these guys, like we finally have found our sound, like what we want to do and how we're going to grow from it. And this is why we're like pushing to go back into the studio like ASAP, because we want people to hear this. We play the songs at our shows, but nobody knows them because they're not recorded. And then we'll play some of the old stuff so people know, like, oh shit, yeah, I know that song. Like, but right now, Sway is like the hot single of us right now, Sway. Like I said, because it's showcasing that new direction of mostly singing stuff. So yeah.
I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, I'm excited to show you. Hell yeah.
um, yeah. So, this is kind of off the topic of your band,
What's up?
but you're half Filipino, half white. I'm just curious, like, what do your parents think about like your musical endeavors, like your post-hardcore musical endeavors, and do they differ from each other? Like, you
Like
know,
my
like
parents, do they differ from each other?
or like is one more supportive of you,
Oh
like
yeah.
musically?
Well,
And
this is good. This is good. Well, at first, like when it got to like the punk stuff when I was younger, like middle school days, my mama, she was, she didn't understand it. She didn't get it. She didn't really, I mean, she wouldn't like get on me about it, you know what I mean? Like she wouldn't like jump down my throat about it and stuff, but she didn't understand it, and let me tell you, she would freak out on some stuff, okay? Like, dyeing my hair, getting a mohawk, wearing studs and like, being all crazy street punk looking. She didn't really understand any of that, to be honest. My dad, however, this is why I say I'm a daddy's boy, right? Because he really, I mean, I'm a mommy's boy now too, but dad was just from the jump has always been super super supportive. He's the one who got me my first guitar. And just actually any time that I expressed to him anything musically that I was interested in, he would try to put me on in one way or another, whether it's showing me a new record, showing me, whatever it was. My dad's a super huge you know like he loves like Depeche Mode and like Duran Duran and like The Cure, like stuff like that, So like I have all that in my background too, So it's like, growing up around like all these eclectic sounds. My mom, she's also super into music too. Like she's more of like she likes Janet Jackson and like sneaker pimps. She likes more EDM type stuff, Um, because she's the dancer, right? So like I feel like it wasn't until high school when she saw that I was taking it more serious. Um, and she saw that I had actually like recorded a whole ass album at the age of like 15, 16. And she was like, and my pops, like he was there through the whole, I'm a kid. I'm a kid, and like and those guys at the time, they were like 4 or 5 years older than me, some of them. And Pops was there from the jump, like, oh, you're gonna go to the studio, like, let's go, like, super supportive. And then yeah, I remember one day when I really, really felt the support from mom was one day she was like, "Oh, Stephanie, you have a show, Steph? You have a show?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, we got a show at Fitz." She's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to go." And I'm like, "You're gonna go to the show?" I was like, "Mom, this is a like a metal show, right?" She's like, "Okay, but I can be behind the table." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you can be behind the table." Mom was like, "You gonna be our merch girl?" Child, she was our merch girl that night. We sold probably the most merch ever out of all the shows because mom was running merch, right? And I think it was that day that because that was the first time mom saw me like on stage. Like that was the first time she's ever seen me perform. She had never gone to any of the Battle of the Band stuff. She never like went to, well, that's a lie. She went to my very, 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 very first punk concert when I was in like seventh grade, seventh or eighth grade, and my dean at the school, this was at Westbriar Middle School, the dean at the time was super into punk music, and he found out that we were in a band, right, me and my little friends, and he was like, "Oh, what if we put on a show after school at the Coliseum one day?" And we're like, "Oh yeah, that'd be cool, like whatever." So I tell my mom, she brings all my titas and my titos, and everybody comes, right? And like, they always see Steph with the mohawk and the crazy clothes and stuff. It doesn't phase them, but they've never seen Steph play the guitar and like yell and be in this band, right? And like man, half the freaking school was there, dude. Like they heard free concert, and like, and you're in middle school and you're like, a concert at the school, like what, dude? I'm gonna go. Right? You're like, what is that? So how these kids show up, my Filipino part of the family's there, and they're just like I like get on stage, as soon as I start playing, they're just like who is that? What is happening right now? You know, they had no clue. But fast forward back to the Fits, when mom was doing merch, that was the first time since that I was in this more mature band that was actually developing and like playing shows and doing all kinds of stuff, that she was like, you know, she was really like, I could tell she appreciated it more. You know what I mean? She was able to see the effect that we had on these kids, you know, and all these people. And I think that really changed her perspective on the whole thing. Like I really, you know, I feel like this is so cliche, bro, but you know, Filipino mamas want you to be a doctor or a nurse, or in my case, she wanted me to go into dentistry because her, you know, my tita and out there, my titas out there was in dentist or dentist. So, you know, things like this. But for me, I'm like, nah, man, I want to be a rock star. Like I want to play music, I want to do art, like I want to make my own rules and express myself however I need to. And if I can make a living doing that too, then like let's go. You know, I'm gonna try. I'm definitely gonna try. But yeah, she nowadays 100% she's super supportive. But yeah, my dad has definitely always been the more supportive one. Dad has always been the more supportive one. He was the one that, you know, got me my guitars or like equipment, like my first guitar amp. He got me my first microphone. Anytime I would come to him with like ideas like, oh dad, I want to start this band, or I'm gonna join this band and do this, he's always like, do it. Do it. You gotta do it. What, as long as you're making music, you just gotta do it. And I'm like, say less, you know? Like he just like, it was like since he handed me my first guitar, it's like he already knew that this is what I was meant to do. Like I could literally, I have like so many hobbies, dude, and I do, honestly, I feel like sometimes I do a little too much. I'm not gonna lie, but at the same time, like, but at the end of the day, music is always going to be my number one passion and thing that I will always fall back on, you know. And it and my entire family at this point is super supportive of it. um like I said, you know, I think, you know, the older you get to, the more I show up with more tattoos. It's like, it's not a phase, mom. It's not a phase anymore, mom. You know, so yeah, they're super cool, super supportive. You know, I feel like I don't think that I've ever had a time with either of them where did not feel supported on something. And that's not even with music, that's just with everything in my life. Like, you know, I get it. Some parents like may not agree with what their kids are into or what they're doing. They may not support it all the time. You know, it might make them feel a certain type of way, or like they're a failure as a parent, or like, you know how it goes. Um, but I feel like my family is just super very accepting, and they've always been like, even though my mom, you know, being from the Philippines, was a little more hard to break that shell at first. You know, as my dad, I feel like was a really big help, and like trying to show her that like it's okay for us to, you know, have these or like certain things or have these feelings or like whatever it is, like it's okay, you know, like it's not the end of the world, and to just be patient about it, you know, and allow us to figure out our own. My pops would always say, you know, do what you got to do, you know, you just, you know, be safe about it, you know, if you want to try something, be safe about it, maybe even let me know. You know, like you want to, you know, do, you know, things like this, like just very open-minded, I guess you could say. They were just super, you know, because I have a lot of friends too that grew up with parents who were very strict, and they were very sheltered, you know. Like I got a few friends that were very sheltered. Even to this day, we'll like be talking about something and I'll bring something up from, you know, a movie or like a certain band or something from the past, and they're like, oh, I wasn't allowed to listen to that, or I wasn't allowed to watch that. And I'm like, oh damn. Like damn, I don't know what I would do if I wasn't if I wasn't introduced to these things at the age I was, because now that I'm older, I understand now more like the different things, you know what I mean? Like, and why, you know, my, you know, parents, like, you know, showed us certain things at said age, because some kids don't get to experience that kind of stuff, you know. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know if you know who Adam Ant is from like the 80s, but like that dude used to dress like super crazy too. And like very punk, but like fashionista-ish, you know, with like he would wear scarves around his waist and like this crazy like captain vest, but then he would have like a Indian feather in his hair and like makeup, like cool guy, right? And but it's like things like that, you know. It's like, but my dad also, when he was like around my age now, he was super like hipster dude, like checkered Vans and flat top with like the one piercing, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, did you just come from Depeche Mode, bro? Like, you look good. But yeah, I feel like at this point in my life, both parents are super supportive in everything that I've been doing, whether it's been, you know, singer songwriter stuff, you know, rap. You know, I try the whole hip hop thing every once in a while. And then you know, just I just like to express myself through the arts of music, you know, whether it don't really matter the genre. I like to explore too. Um but yeah, they're super cool. They're cool about it nowadays. Even more so.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think I guess I don't want to generalize, but I feel like for a lot of you know, Asian Americans or Asians who are into, you know, the heavier genres of music, I feel like that's a pretty shared experience. Like
Right?
if you're from a mixed household, like at least one parent is, you know,
That part.
a
That
little
part.
less accepting, at least at
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
especially like when it came to tattoos and stuff too. Like, came home with my first tattoo, mom just came up to me and she was like, "Oh my God, Steph." She's like, "Please tell me that is fake." I'm like, "And it's not fake." I mean, you know, what am I gonna do? Lie? Like, you can't take it off, mom. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, you know, I feel like with her, like when like I do like, it was a lot harder when I was younger with her, because you know, like I said, her culture is different. You know, like she grew up in a different culture, like how they were out in the Philippines versus how we're very Americanized
yeah.
here. And then being with my white dad, you know, my dad's just so chill and nonchalant, and then my mom is like, you know, sometimes, and she just wants to know her way, you know what I mean? And like, it wasn't something she was used to or what she grew up around, you know what I mean? So for her children to like, you know, be into that kind of stuff, you know, like she never understood that kind of stuff. But you know, she was just like, she tried to, in the sense, like she was like, you know, she would like listen, like, okay, here, like when I first did the Since the Ashes LP, that was my first band that I was doing like screaming and a little bit of singing and stuff. I was like, Mom, let me show you this song. She's like, what is it? And I'm like, it's my band. She's like, okay. So I show her the song. She's like, who is that screaming? Is that you? Like, yeah. And she's like, wow, how are you doing that? Like, you know, like she just like, she starts becoming more intrigued, you know. And then the older I got and the more stuff I would show her and stuff, of course she doesn't understand. She doesn't understand the screaming, and she doesn't understand the whole breakdown sequence and like all that. She doesn't get none of that. All she sees is that her kid is doing the singing and in part of this group. You know, she's looking at more as a whole, like he's happy type deal, you know, like I'm not gonna like, you know, stand in the way of his happiness. So now she's just, I can just be like, yo, mom, show you the song. And I know for a fact she's not gonna understand a word, but I know that she'll appreciate it in a sense, you know what I mean? And then I got dad and my sis, and I'll show them stuff. They're like, "Oh yeah, this is a banger, bro! Like, I love this. You know, I can't wait to hear it." Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah.
But it's good to know that you know, with being the, you know, half Filipino, half white,
Uh-huh.
like that I'm not the only one. Like, I mean, like, you know, Nikki and I, my friend Nikki, you know, we used to be in a band together too. It was me, her, and her sister Natalie, just a three-piece Filipino band, huh? But we just we played mostly like covers and stuff. We had a couple originals, but it was punk music,
Yeah.
and but like her family was like super supportive of it. Like, I mean, I'm sure her mom at times were probably like, oh my God, these girls with these fishnets and these short skirts, you know what I'm saying? And like these mohawks and stuff, and we're playing in this all pink room, like this punk music, you know what I'm saying? and but they were like super supportive of it too. So but I mean, like you said, like there's some things that they might
Mhm.
be cool with, and there's other things that they're just like, ooh,
Yeah.
but it does help having like my dad who's
Mm.
half or who's white, and he can kind of like
Yeah.
chime in, like, listen, like this is kind of how these kids are in America, or whatever,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
because we were all young and we were all still trying to figure it out too. So
Mhm. Yeah,
yeah,
just figuring out what you want to do, experimenting,
exactly.
yeah.
I mean, you go through all the phases, right? You
Yeah,
go
exactly.
Hollister phase, the goth phase, the punk phase and now we're just in this phase of being adults and just liking whatever the hell we want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like no,
Mhm.
like who cares what anybody thinks? I like what I like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. To close off, I guess, do you have, a short piece of advice you would, I don't know, give to your younger self, or like younger musicians, singer-songwriters, who just, want to start a band, or um want to get
Yeah.
that.
Um, just do it. Just do it. Don't overthink it, if it feels right, just go for it. We have a lot to express as humans, and if music is your way of expressing, really take advantage of it and don't ever let that go.
Mhm.
um it does, no matter how hard life gets, or what it throws at you, uh don't give up, and don't even put it on a pause. If you Sometimes we got to step away and take a little second to breathe on some things, but just if you just put your mind to it and stick on it. And if you think it sounds like shit, somebody else is not going to think that. You know what I mean? You are also you are your worst critic, is that what they say? So don't be too hard on yourself either. um you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days, but as long as you're expressing yourself through your music, that's all you need, so just keep on keeping on. Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing. And I just like to thank you again for taking the time out of your day, to talk with me.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure. Yeah.
Okay. Um, Wish I could talk to you longer. I actually have class at 1.
No, you're good. You're
But
good. Hey, you
yeah.
have my email. Add me on
Yeah.
social media. Like we're friends
Yeah.
now.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'd love to talk with you again. I mean, just to hear about more of your experiences. It's awesome. I mean,
Well, I
I'd love to
appreciate
go out to
that.
one of your shows too.
Yeah, please do. We actually have one February 10th at
February
a
10th?
at Acadia Bar.
Okay. I'm gonna write that down, see if I
Yeah.
can make it. February
Yeah, yeah,
10th.
yeah. And I'll shoot you a flyer once
Okay.
it's made. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Also one thing. So if you want, so I'm also a DJ at K True, which is the Rice radio station. And we play all sorts of stuff. Like if you
Cool.
want to send like a CD or something, like I'd be happy to, you know, submit it for
If
it to
you
be played and
I
stuff
mean,
like
you
that.
have Sway, maybe you can throw Sway on there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, that'd be cool. And then once we get the new album out, I would love to send that
Oh
your
yeah,
way.
send me like some files or something. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
that'd
sure.
be cool. Rice radio station.
Yeah, yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Cool. I
Hmm.
did it. That's definitely something we'll do
Yeah.
for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, well, thanks so much again. I'll keep you updated on the interview stuff. Oh, there's one more thing I forgot.
Yeah.
We have so we have this big exhibit. We've been planning it for a year. It's gonna be held at the Julia Idison building of the Houston Public Library. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. It's
Mm.
just this, they have this super, super old ass, like fancy, like library building. And there's going to be a reception for the exhibit. It's like limited to like 90 people. I mean, I'd love to invite you to be there. Like the President Rice is speaking. There's going to be all sorts of objects, you know, from all sorts of like his interviews we've done,
Oh, cool.
and that sort of thing. I'll send you the flyer.
Yeah,
No
please.
pressure if you don't want to come, but I don't.
No, yeah, no,
Yeah,
sure,
yeah,
send me the flyer.
yeah.
I'd love to check it
Uh-huh.
out. Yeah. Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah, it was a
Kevin.
pleasure talking with you. Love to talk with you again. Maybe I'll see you at a show sometime.
Hey,
For
hopefully.
sure. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah, of course. Hope you have a good rest of your afternoon. And if you have
And
questions,
yeah,
just
hey,
shoot. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and same with you, man. It's been a pleasure, and I got you anytime. Just hit me up.
All right, for sure. Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Kevin. All right, have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.